Today I'm testing Canson Heritage 300-pound rough from Legion paper. My study, as usual, is going to be New Zealand silver-I. I've got a pre-drawn outline I'm using for all my swatch samples. I'm just popping it on a light box and tracing through to save me redrawing the bird 9 times. I'm just laying in enough outlines to guide the sketch. As you'll notice, it's perching on a rock, which silver-I's of course never do. I'm just taking a little bit of artistic license. I'm applying soap to the end of my point brush so that the liquid frisket doesn't bond with the bristles of the brush and destroy it. Just makes for easy cleanup. The first thing I notice when I'm laying in the base light wash background is the sumptuous way that the paint and water interacts with the paper. It seems to have that perfect balance between absorption and staying moist on the surface. The wet on wet bleeds feather quite deliciously, and the wet on satin, it leaves a controlled soft edge. All in all, excellent paper for washes. Now I'm using wet on dry with burnt umber and Payne's grey to see how the pigments interact. Again, it's quite exquisite. The paper is both responsive and sensitive. Feathering back to clear seems pretty good. It's not staining. Blooms, however, are not as defined as I typically like them. That's consistent with a paper that blends and absorbs as well as this one clearly does. So, given that I like to use deliberate blooms in all of my wildlife art, this is probably going to be a problem. But the rest of the paper performance is exquisite. I've laid out the light olive lime green. I'm just dropping in the burnt sienna light, a little bit of Naples yellow, and Payne's grey. Again, reworking paint over formerly dried areas. It's accepting it well, and the paper glazes like a god. It's absolutely exquisite. Seamless, translucent layers. It's not muddying, distorting the detail underneath. You can be either soft, feathered, or quite dense with it, and the paper just accepts it very, very patiently. Second layer, it's letting me feather in with water, and I'm even trying to re-bloom. We'll see how the blooms come out after it's dried. Blooms are a feature of time as well as interaction. It is noticeably bad for lifting, though. I'm unable to do my normal technique with the eye of dropping in a clear droplet of water and lightening the colour to indicate a spherical translucence. So that's the first failing of this paper, the fact that it doesn't lift. Again, shadowing, fine lining, it's accepting reasonably well. I'm having to use a knife here to scrape away the highlights, which is in the category of desperate last measures. Paper is taking fine lining well without bleeding, and fine wet on dry, no problem at all. Lets me feather in those pigments after they've been applied, and another layer of glaze does not interrupt the texture of the paint underneath. All in all, for glazing, it's absolutely exquisite. You can see when it dried, the blooms have kicked in a little bit, but they're not defined enough. Its main flaw is that it doesn't lift at all.